I'm looking at the electric eel again, and I've said before that the plasma discharge in the sky to me looks like the astrological sign Pisces. And in Mahabharata, the gods were fighting with Vajra. This is one of the weapons. Pisces symbol is two fish, ruling planet Neptune. Who's Neptune? In Greek, he's called Poseidon. Poseidon equates to the Babylonian water god Ea. And that brought me back to Sybil and her fish hat, which does connect to Johannes and the Pope. Janus and Sybil. The Pope, as the Petroma, bears their keys. I wonder why. Ancient electric universe mythology, or just coincidence? These are radio images of Jupiter's magnetosphere due to the synchrotron radiation as seen through its radio wave emissions. Ancient mythology has similar imagery that involves the god Marduk, the planet Jupiter, the Zeus thunderbolt, and thunderbolts of the gods, Vajra. What is really interesting about the Vajra version of the thunderbolt is the globe in the middle, and that it also sometimes has two more, one on either side. Would a bulbous bit like that really help it as an actual physical fighting weapon? It's hard to believe that it's pure fluke that the ancient civilizations associated a lightning thunderbolt weapon with the god of the planet that has the same look. How did they know what it looked like? Did they see Jupiter's magnetosphere in a more energized state? Was our own atmosphere different to facilitate them seeing it? Did they see things differently to us? Did they know that this is what the radiation belt, plasma instabilities, synchrotron radiation of planets look like, so they associated it with Jupiter? And I found a picture of Enlil fighting a griffin, and what is in his hand? Looks like lightning bolts, and in alchemy, this is the symbol for the scepter of Jove. Who's Jove? Zeus, the king of Olympus. So why is it that the symbol for Neptune looks like Jupiter and the magnetosphere on either side of it? Why does Sybil have that symbol? So there's Zeus up there riding on his eagle and his lightning or fasces. His symbol is the eagle and the scepter and an angel on a bull. Now I did find some mythology here. This is the Lambton worm. It's a story from County Durham, England. John Lambton decides to bunk off church and instead wants to go fishing. He caught a black eel-like creature. Lambton would later describe the beast as having the head reminiscent of a salamander with sharp little teeth. The worm dragon description has led some researchers to surmise that there may be a connection between this animal and the notorious lindworms, which were said to haunt the rest of Europe and parts of Asia. That's a hint. A lindworm is a creature with a serpentine body, a dragon-like head, scaled or reptilian skin. A lindworm in British heraldry is a technical term for a wingless bipedal dragon, often with a venomous bite. In Norwegian heraldry, a lindorm is the same as the wyvern in British heraldry. Lindworm is a mysterious dragon who can play with time, space, and portals. That's the second hint. Skeptics have speculated that the creature, if it were alive at all, may have been a gigantic python or a boa constrictor, which had been transplanted to the British Isles by a sailor from a merchant trading ship. Now they've just told you the answer. Phoenicia, ancient region corresponding to modern Lebanon, with the joining parts of modern Syria and Israel, its inhabitants, the Phoenicians, were notable merchants and traders. The Phoenicians were Semitic peoples who came from the Levant. Their main cities were Sidon, Tyre, and Byblos. In the first millennium, they lived along a 200-kilometer stretch of coastline backing onto the mountains of Lebanon. Apparently, a man passed John on the way and said the creature was cursed and not to throw it in the lake. So John threw it in a well, and then he went off to join the Crusades. When Lambton finally returned home from the Crusades, he was mortified by the terror which gripped his native land because that little worm thing grew. Feeling responsible for the entire situation, he solicited the help of a reputed witch who suggested Lambton have the local blacksmith forge him a unique suit of armor, one which was to be covered with double-edged spikes or spear heads. Now Jupiter's magnetosphere looks similar to the Vajra, but I think it looks similar to a salamander. The head, the little body, and the 4 legs. And now it says that he threw the worm down a well, and a well is a portal. So did he throw a little snake in a well? No, I think he threw a worm into a wormhole. And what's at the bottom of a well? Water is sentient, and the hydrogen within water is conscious as well. On the Assyrian seal, we see the 2 liberations of the waters and of the sun closely associated as if in one event. The rising of the sun, supported by the star goddess Ishtar, or Venus, coincides with the joining of the waters from above with the waters from below, in the presence of 2 Upkalu, which are genies. And Marduk has it as well. He's holding the waters above and the waters below, and he's got flowers around him. And that connected to something else I'd seen of a painting with, I think this is Louis XIV. So Louis XIV is seen talking to some people that are coming from the water. And we've got a person here holding on to this automaton with Zeus juice in the middle of it. Can you see the fasces? And a little worm thing coming out of it. Now this reminds me of Bedknobs and Broomsticks. It's a film from the 60s.
Traguna, Macoides, Tricorum, Satis,
So the witch animates the night using an incantation that was on the star of Astaroth. Aphrodite's unhellenic character is ascribed to the Phoenicians, and thus she is the easiest to identify. She is the Greek version of the Near Eastern great love goddess, who can be identified with the following: Asherah, Astaroth, Astarte, Atargatis, Hathor, Inanna, Ishtar, Kybele, Nene, and Tanais. At the top of the picture here, it looks like a helmet with wings, which is something that was on the knight's face in that clip. But to me it looks like toroidal fields if you were to open it up, and the things that are circling around it are probably a magnetic field. But there's a museum in Versailles, and look, we've got 2 little flying babies, and they've got an automaton in the middle. Look at this shield. It looks like a toroidal field to me. Couldn't find a bigger picture. And now we have the Salon de Guerre. This is in Versailles as well. One baby is putting fasces into the automaton, and the other baby is holding up a mirror to an angel that has a feather to it. But what I said about in the other one, that plasma, when it touches electricity, it feathers out. And I found something noticeable on another website. The person says, "This is very interesting. I'm currently looking to see if there are any direct cultural links between Phoenician settlements and the British Islands." Yes, I think so. Here's some more faceless knights with electricities or fasces. And that one on the right's got things behind his head, which reminded me of the Hindu gods with the snakes behind them. There's another one up there, and it looks like Bacchus underneath of him, the face with the vines and the grapes. The fire and volcano god Hephaestus was the Greek divine smith. He parallels the Phoenician god Chusor, who was created as the inventor of iron. In the East, early metalwork and religion were connected, bringing about the rise of the god of metal crafts. In Greece, he was a popular god of the people who maintained his position among the 12 Olympians. He does, though, have a connection with Cyprus, and in particular with the cult of Aphrodite. Hephaestus and Aphrodite were linked in the Odyssey by Homer. So I find that interesting that a metal god is in contact with Aphrodite, stroke Venus, stroke Inanna Ishtar, the portal goddess. God named Kotar, blacksmith god, identified in the Ugaritic texts as building a palace for the god Baal and forging his weapons for the conflict against the sea god Yam, known also from Phoenician inscriptions as Kosar and Chusor. So I think that's what this is a picture about. And it might also be the 7 metal gods that are around here as well. Prince Yam-Nahar, the god of the sea. Yes, Yam was one of the Elohim, the children of God, many of whom married humans and brought forth the Nephilim. It's not certain what the Phoenicians called themselves in their own language. It appears to have been Canaani, Canaanites. Yam is the god of the sea in the Canaanite pantheon. The deity's name derives from the Canaanite word sea. Now look at the bottom. He's equivalent to Poseidon and Neptune. Do you see his trident in his hand? Yeah, that's what they're really talking about when they're doing all of this. There's one putting a crown on Louis' head. And then over here, there's Mercury with his shield and Caduceus. And look at that. Is that a worm or is that an electric eel? So I'm thinking that this is the god Chusor, and they've created this thing to fight Yam, because what happens when you put electricity onto water? So I don't think that this is the Lambton worm. I think the Lambton worm is a retelling of how the Phoenicians got here. You see, it's a faceless knight. Yeah, there's no face. The faceless. The faceless. The faceless. The faceless. The faceless, the faceless. Okay? Now here we have Marduk with cymatics on your clothes. You've got technology on your head. You're holding a frequency in your hand and you're on a boat with a dragon. Marduk's symbol animal, the Mushushu or snake dragon. In the first millennium, Marduk is identified with Jupiter. Hydra was a gigantic 9-headed water serpent, which haunted the swamps of Lerna. The Hydra and the crab were afterwards placed amongst the stars by Hera as the constellations Hydra and Cancer. The constellation Leo and Hydra as Mushushu, with the planet Jupiter. Who's Jupiter? Zeus, god of thunder and lightning. Our weekdays are ruled by the 7 Sumerian gods. Jupiter is equivalent to Enlil. In the Akkadian literature, Enlil's almighty but malevolent nature is often portrayed. In one devotional poem, Enlil is described as the king of heaven and the netherworld, whose command no one can set aside, the lord of destinies, the nominator of kings. Enlil sends the drought, the plague, and the flood, and what happened after that? The fish people showed up. The fish nations. The earliest instructor of man in letters, sciences, and arts, especially in architecture, geometry, botany, and agriculture, and in all other useful knowledge, was the fish god Ioannes. This universal teacher, according to Berosus, appeared in the Persian Gulf, bordering on Babylonia. The Phoenicians probably arrived in the area about 3000 BCE. Nothing is known of their original homeland, though some traditions place it in the region of the Persian Gulf. So we've got Sybil, who has a fish on her head, and Marduk, who has a fish dragon thing with him. She has the symbol of Jupiter with its magnetosphere in her hand, which I think looks a lot like a little salamander. She is the other side of Janus, the god of the gateways, and she's wearing a fish hat, which the Pope has. The Pope is really a Babylonian stroke Phoenician priest. That's why an aerial view of the Vatican is shaped like the Phoenician portal goddess Tanit, aka Ishtar, Astarte, Atargatis, etc. The Phoenician creation story is another account of creation which most religions attempt to answer. The cosmogony of Tautus supposes that all things consist of a dark mist of an ethereal nature, the breath of dark mist, and of a turbid chaos black as Erebus, that these were boundless, as for many ages remained without a boundary. But when the spirit fell in love with its own principles and they were interblended, that interweaving was called love, and this love was the creation of all things. But chaos did not know its own creation. From its embrace, Mot, the god of death, was born. From Mot, it was that every seed of creation came, the birth of all cosmic bodies. First there were great lives devoid of all sensation, and out of these came subsequently great lives possessed of intelligence. The latter were called Zophashamim, overseers of the heavens. They were fashioned in the forms of eggs and shone forth as Mot, the sun, and the moon, and the stars, and the great planetary spheres. Now as the original nebula began to lighten through the heat mists and clouds of sea and earth were produced, and gigantic downpours of torrents of waters in the firmament, even after they were separated, they were still carried from their proper places by the heat to the sun. all the watery and earthly elements met together again in the nebula, one with the other. The overseeing Zophar Shamin eventually slipped into the dimensions of our planet. They interbred with the daughters of the earth. The first landing place seems to have been Baalbek in Lebanon. They used the art of magic words, mantras, to lift and move large stone blocks and open huge stone doors. The great platform served as a landing site for their spaceships. Sanchoniathon claims that these demigods possessed light and other more complicated ships. Under the supervision of Tautis, their progeny from the daughters of Earth established Byblos. They then spread into the Levant and further into Egypt. The demigods took the cedar mountain that separated Baalbek and Byblos for their abode.
And as I stepped closer to it, I realized this is more than just a well. It was deep and dark and foreboding.
This well. This is no ordinary well. This is a portal.
A portal is a door, a dimensional door. I could sense that this portal was where many spirits were coming and going, both good and bad.